I have been sitting with this one for a while, longer than any other story I have told you. I have started it in my head a dozen times and stopped a dozen times and told myself that perhaps this was one that did not need to be told, that perhaps there are confessions that belong only to the man carrying them and the God he is not entirely sure he believes in. That perhaps at 82 years old, you have earned the right to take certain things quietly to your grave. But I keep coming back to the same thought, and the thought is this. I started this channel because I believe that a life fully lived is worth talking about, honestly. Not just the parts that reflect well, not just the adventures and the loves and the wisdom that comes out clean and presentable. All of it. The parts that make you proud, and the parts that make you sit in a chair at 82 years old and feel the weight of something you did 50 years ago, as freshly as the day you did it. So, here we are. My name is David. I am 82 years old. I was married to my first wife, Janet, for 26 years. She was a good woman, a genuinely good woman, the kind of goodness that is not performed or announced, but simply present, consistently, in everything she did. She was a devoted mother to Thomas and Claire. She was patient with me in ways I did not deserve. She kept our home with a quiet dignity that I took for granted for years and recognized fully only after it was gone. And I cheated on her. One time. In the autumn of 1987, I was 43 years old, which is old enough to know better, and I did it anyway. And I have carried that with me for 39 years. And I'm going to tell you the whole truth of it today, because I think the whole truth is the only version worth telling. Let me take you back to who I was in 1987. I had been married to Janet for 17 years by then. We had Thomas, who was 14, and Claire, who was 11. I had a good job, senior engineer at a firm in Manchester, the kind of job that sounds impressive at dinner parties and means in practice that you spend a significant portion of your life in meetings that could have been letters. We had a nice house in Cheshire. We had a routine, a solid, reliable, comfortable routine. And I want to be careful here, because I know what happens when men of a certain age start describing their marriages as routines. It starts to sound like a justification, like the routine is the reason and therefore somehow the explanation. It is not. I want to be absolutely clear about that. The routine was not Janet's failure. It was not even a failure. It was just a life, a real and ordinary life, the kind that most people live and find entirely sufficient, which says something about most people that I mean as a genuine compliment. The problem was not the marriage. The problem was me. I was 43 years old, and I was restless in a way I could not name, and did not try particularly hard to name, because men of my generation were not encouraged to examine their interior lives with any great rigor. You felt things, and you got on with it. You didn't sit down and ask yourself why you felt them, or what they meant, or what might happen if you ignored them long enough. You went to work, and you came home, and you watched the football, and you told yourself everything was fine, and mostly everything was fine. And the parts that weren't fine, you left in a drawer somewhere and hoped they would sort themselves out. They don't, by the way. They don't sort themselves out. They sit in the drawer and they wait. And then one evening in autumn, you are at a work function in Manchester, and a woman named Vivienne is talking to you at the bar, and something in you that has been sitting very quietly in a drawer for a very long time opens its eyes. Vivienne was 41 years old. She was a project manager at a firm we were consulting with. She was sharp and funny, and she looked at you when you spoke in a way that made you feel like what you were saying was the most interesting thing she had heard all week. She was not more beautiful than Janet. I want to say that clearly because it is true and because it matters. She was not kinder or more intelligent or more worthy of attention. She was simply new. And new, when you are 43 and restless, and have left too many things in too many drawers for too long has a power that I was not equipped to resist. We talked for 2 hours at that bar, just talked, and I drove home telling myself it was just a conversation, which it was, that night. We were working on the same project for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of meetings and site visits and lunches that started professionally and became something else. And phone calls in the evening that I made from the office when everyone else had gone home. 6 weeks of telling myself at every stage that it wasn't serious, that nothing had really happened, that I was in control of it, which is the lie that every person in this situation tells themselves right up until they aren't. It happened once. One evening after a late site meeting at a hotel bar that neither of us had planned to be at, and I will not dress it up or dramatize it because it deserves neither. It was a choice, a bad one, made consciously by a man who knew exactly what he was doing and did it anyway. That is the truth of it. The following morning, I drove home, and Janet was in the kitchen making breakfast, and Thomas was arguing with Claire about something I can't remember. And the radio was on, and everything was exactly as I had left it. Exactly. And I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen, looking at my own family in my own house, and I felt something that I can only describe as a kind of horror. Not dramatic horror, quiet horror. The horror of a man looking at something valuable and realizing what he has just risked. I ended contact with Vivienne that day, a phone call, brief and final, and to her credit, she made it easier than it needed to be. I don't know what she felt about it. I never asked, and I think that was another small failure in a week of larger ones. I simply closed the door and walked back into my life and told myself it was over. And here is the part that I find hardest to tell you. Not that day, not that week, not in the months that followed when the guilt sat on my chest like something physical, when I was kinder to her than usual in the way that guilty people are kind, when I noticed everything about her with a sharp and painful attention that I should have been paying all along. Not when she was ill, not in the 14 months between her diagnosis and her death. I sat with her in hospital rooms and held her hand, and I never told her. And I have never fully resolved how I feel about that. There are days when I believe I made the right decision, that telling her would have been a selfish act, unburdening myself at her expense, handing her a pain she did not need and could do nothing with. That the kindest thing I could do was carry it myself and let her go in peace. I have made that argument to myself many times, and there are moments when it holds. And there are other days when I think I denied her a truth she had a right to, that the decision to tell or not tell was mine and should have been hers, that I managed her feelings without her consent, which is its own kind of disrespect, however well-intentioned. I have never arrived at a clean answer. I'm not sure one exists. What I can tell you is what it did to me, not as a bid for sympathy. I want to be clear about that. I am not telling you this so that you will feel sorry for a man who made a choice and lived with its consequences. That would be entirely the wrong response. But I think honesty about consequences is part of honesty about actions, and so I will tell you. It made me vigilant. For the rest of my marriage, I was vigilant in a way I had not been before. Not in a fearful way, not in the way of a man watching over his shoulder, but in the way of a man who has seen something he values nearly disappear and has recalibrated accordingly. I was more present, more attentive, more willing to put down whatever I was doing and simply be there. Whether that makes me a better husband for the remaining years, or whether it was simply guilt wearing the costume of virtue, I genuinely cannot tell you. Probably some of both. It also made me think seriously, for the first time, about who I actually was. Not who I presented myself as, not the solid, reliable engineer with the nice house in Cheshire, but who I actually was underneath all of that. What I wanted, what I was afraid of, what I had been leaving in drawers. And that examination, uncomfortable as it was probably long overdue. When Janet died in 1998, I was 54 years old, and I was, in ways I did not expect and could not have predicted, a different man than I had been in 1987. Not a perfect one, but a more honest one, at least with myself, which I have come to think is the only place honesty can really start. I told Thomas about it 3 years ago. He is in his 50s now, old enough to receive complicated truths about his father without it destroying his understanding of his childhood, which was a good childhood, genuinely, whatever I did. We were sitting in his garden after Sunday lunch, and I don't know what made that the moment. Perhaps it was just that I was 79 and aware that the moments were becoming finite, and I told him. He was quiet for a long time. Thomas is like me in that way. He processes things in silence before he speaks, which I have always considered one of his better qualities. Then he said, "Did Mum know?" I said no. He was quiet again. Then he said, "Are you glad you didn't tell her?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't know. I have never known." He nodded. He didn't say it was all right. He didn't say he forgave me on her behalf, which would not have been his to give. He just nodded, and after a while he said, "Thanks for telling me." And we went back inside and had another cup of tea, and that was that. I have not told Claire. Perhaps I will. Perhaps this video will do it for me, which is a thought that has occurred to me and which I have decided to proceed past. Because at 82, you cannot curate your honesty based on who might be watching. Sarah knows. I told her before we married. I told her because I had made a decision, after Janet, that I was not going to be a man with things in drawers anymore. That if I was going to do this marriage, this life, I was going to do it with all of myself available, and nothing hidden. She listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which is not always her default setting. And when I finished, she said, "That was a long time ago." And I said yes. And she said, "Are you the same man who did that?" And I thought about it properly and said no. And she said, "Then let's have dinner." That is, I think, the most generous thing anyone has ever said to me. And I have tried every day since to be worthy of it. I am not telling you this story because I want absolution. I am 82 years old, and I have made my peace with it. Or as much peace as a man can make with something like this, which is an imperfect and ongoing peace, rather than a resolved and finished one. I am telling you because I think there is something important in the full accounting of a life. Because I think the version of wisdom that only shows you the lessons and edits out the failures is not really wisdom at all. It is just a highlights reel with the sound turned up. I failed Janet in 1987. I made a choice I should not have made, and I kept a secret I am still not sure I should have kept. I have lived with both of those things for 39 years, and the living with them, the honest, uncomfortable daily living with them, has shaped me in ways that the better version of myself, the version that never did it, would not have been shaped. I do not recommend the route, but I will not pretend the destination was nothing. Janet deserved better than I gave her in that autumn of 1987. She was a good woman, and she deserved a hug. I think she would also have had quite a lot to say about it, because Janet always did, and I think I would have deserved every word. Right then.